data. We'll use some pretty everyday type of things here to try and illustrate the difference between this. Let's imagine we're making a graph of two different things here, and one of them is I'm gonna put day on the bottom of this, and I'm gonna put time in days here. Okay, this is gonna start at 0. This might be a graph of how much homework. I don't know how you'd measure homework or what the units of homework are, but let's say homework done. How do you measure how much homework you've done? So this is days since spring break starts. Okay, so Saturday morning or even Friday night at even 2:38 on Friday afternoon. Spring break starts. Let's call that time equals 0. So let's say that there's an initial value because you've already done some homework in the year. So let's put that value here. I don't know what it is. And let's say that as the time goes by, whether homework gets done or not, I don't know how this graph's going to look. I'm guessing for most of you, for the first, if this is actually time in days, and so this was 2 days, 4 days. Let's only put every other one here. You know, when you're creating your graph, you don't have to put every single number on there. You can set it up like this: 12 days, and then I should continue it a bit more, and 16 is probably about where it ends, right? 16 right there. I'm guessing for lots of you, it looks like this for the first part, right? And then, it accidentally went up there a little bit. So we should actually use the exact straight line tool here. So it looks something like this. Does it continue right to the end like that? You think so? There's not anything at the end? The last day, okay, so right here, maybe straight. So, whoa, we have all this homework we have to do. So, well, I don't know how much it goes up. If this was the amount of homework you had done this year, then probably it's not going to go up that much in 2 days, is it? You'd be surprised. Okay, well, regardless of what the graph actually looks like, what we're focused on here is this. And we're focused on this even though I have no idea how would you measure how much homework you'd done? Like what units might it be? Here it's easy, it's days, time in days. How many pieces of paper you have? Okay. Like counting the number of pieces of paper. So you write really big to use up a lot of paper, or words, or pounds. I don't know. I don't know what you measured in. That is actually good if you think number of pieces of paper. If you do number of pieces of paper, that actually makes this what you call discrete data. Because if I was to put the numbers on here, if I was to put 1 piece of paper, 2 pieces of paper, I realize this means that you've only done 2 pieces of paper since the beginning of the year, which is probably not a lot. Can you have 1.5 pieces of paper? I guess, sort of, I don't know. Like, you could have 1.5 pieces of paper. How about if we say, let's pretend you measured your homework in pounds, okay? I did 4 pounds of homework on spring break. I know that doesn't make any sense, and when I thought putting homework on here, I didn't really think through how you'd actually measure it, but I know you'd probably say I did 10 hours of homework or whatever, but we're measuring this here, right? You could put hours there. However you measure it, you continuously might be working on homework, right? It doesn't jump suddenly from here up to here, does it? It isn't like you had none done and all of a sudden now you have this amount done. You work on it and it continuously grows to this amount, right? The time continuously passes here and from there to there, right? It doesn't suddenly jump from 0 days, beginning of spring break, to suddenly now it's 2 days, right? Or suddenly now it's 1 day even. The whole day continuously passes. This is continuous data. If we use this and this we're talking about continuous data. One way to check if something is continuous data is, could you have values in between the ones that are here? This is a 2. You could obviously have a 1 in between here. Could you have half a day has passed? That makes sense, right? Half a day, a quarter of a day, 0.1 of a day. The values in between mean something. Time is continuous here. Whereas if we made a graph like this that was a graph that said we're going to put down the day, like this is day 1 and this is day 2 and this is day 3 and 4 and 5, and we're going to put either a bar or we're going to put a dot or an X or something for how much homework you did that day. Like on day 1, like on Saturday or whatever, you did 0 homework. Let's put in total what you had. There's how much homework you had in total there. Here's how much homework you had on day 2. Here's how much homework you had on day 3. Sometimes you don't want to join the points, and sometimes you do. This actually works better like this, I think. Thinking of this as continuous data. Let's think of something a little more clear that. So we're not going to use the homework example over here, but we can still do day. Let's say that some fundraising group was raising money each day of a week, and so they called this day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It was 5 school days, and let's say they had already had some money here, and I don't know how much money this is. So this is money in dollars, money raised, some group in dollars here. So let's say at the beginning of this week they had, I don't know what this is here, $4. No, $4,000. Let's say this is in thousands or something like that, right? So on day 1 they had 4,000 in total. On day 2, let's say they had 5,000 in total. If you're numbering the days and saying this is day 1, this is day 2, can you talk about a day 1.5? Not really, right? If you're talking about days having passed here, like time having passed from 0 and it just continuously passes, yes, 1.5 days might have passed during spring break. But if you're saying, okay, we all get together and we count how much money we have today, and we say, oh, look, today we have $4,000, and then you all go home, and then the group comes back, and the next day counts how much money they have in total on day 2. Hey, look, we have $5,000 today. This is discrete data because there is no day 1.5. They didn't come in the middle of the night and count it, right? If they were sitting there and continuously counting every cent that came in, then maybe you could change this to being more what you call continuous data. Like time starts and we're counting the money the whole time. If you just measured on day 1, measured on day 2 and 3, this is discrete data. They're separate. Each of these values are separate and the in-between points don't mean anything. You need to understand the difference between those two terms, discrete and continuous. Are those values there discrete or continuous? The money, is that discrete or continuous? That's a tough question. The homework one is pretty straightforward that it's continuous, because if you start your stopwatch right at the beginning here and you let it run, it could say any time in between there. Plus, again, not that we're measuring homework in pounds, but if you could you have any value on that axis? Could you have 1.5 pounds or 1.1 or 1.0, 1.2, 3, 4, 6, 8? Could you have any value along that axis? You could, right? Over here we're saying, if we're saying day 1, day 2, we can't have days in between. Could you have values in between these? Well, if these are, the way I drew it up here, it's $4, $8, $12. You can have values in between there, but I guess what might happen is eventually you talk about, $1.01 and 1.02. I guess you can't really have values in between there. This is a tricky one, but I guess you could say it's sort of continuous because you can have values in between. you're going to be asked to look at different graphs and think about whether they're continuous. My usual example I always seem to use here, as has been pointed out by people who watch the things on YouTube, my usual one when I'm talking about any kind of function or relationship between two things is time and number of squirrels that pass by the window. So I'm sure I've used that. They run by the, you know what? Maybe they're sort of dying off. I haven't seen them in a long time, but if we started the stopwatch right now and started counting the squirrels, we'd probably get bored before we saw any, but maybe it's more, I mean, they're all hibernating or something now. It is March only, right? Well, at some point we'll start seeing them again, right? So this is time in weeks. How about that? Time in weeks. Is this measurement down here, is this discrete or continuous? If we take the stopwatch and click start now, and we stare out the window for weeks on end. It depends. If we're sitting here and we have the stopwatch going continuously, it's continuous. If you have a stopwatch that goes in weeks, not hours or minutes or whatever, this could be continuous if we wanted it to. Is this discrete or continuous? It's pretty discrete, right? Right now we have 0 squirrels and it's going to look like this for quite a while, right? Now before I even do that, what you should think about is, let's actually change this so this one is discrete too, so that we don't confuse you. How could I write something down here so that we're going to be thinking of it as discrete? Time is tough sometimes, because sometimes you can think of it as continuous, or sometimes you can think about it as discrete. If we put what week it is here, and we say here's week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, and we just put a number in for each week, now we're thinking of it as discrete, because we're talking about week 1, week 2. There's no week 1.5, right? How many do you think we're going to have for week 1 if we actually did this? 0. I think we're going to not see them till April or whatever. Maybe week 2, maybe like this. I'm not joining the points because it doesn't necessarily make sense to join the points if this is discrete. What about if we have, what about suddenly in week 5 we have some more here now? Let's say we see 3 walk by. So we put an X up here. Do the points in between here have any meaning in this situation? Week 4.5? Not really. Again, if we were changing it to think about it as time in weeks continuously going by, they would. What about the ones in between here? 1 squirrel, 2 squirrels, 3 squirrels. Do the numbers in between have any meaning? No. So it doesn't necessarily make sense to join the points.